Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I am Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Hello.
Ruben Bressler.
Hi, it's good to be back. It's been a while.
It's been just a hot minute, but this will be D&D's Ruben Bressler.
That's right. You might know me from such notable things as Dungeons and also from Dragons.
Together.
Whereas you just know me from Dungeons.
Right.
Wow. See also the pre-show for more on that. That said, we also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most luxuriant and letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 2 converted mana cost creature cards. Ruben?
This week's winner has been a long time coming. James Robb gave us some top 10 lists options in the past. I think we used one of them at one point. And this winner comes from YouTube, but was also sent me via direct message. Because it is for shame, Ruben, and you call yourself a red mage? 10 slots without mentioning one of the most important creatures in the burn deck. Wow. Such blasphemy. Eidolon of the Great Revel is such a high impact card. Think Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, that if you don't deal with it as soon as you see it, it's going to hurt you in the long run. It has championship pedigree. It helped Joe Larson win Pro Tour Magic Origins. And to this day, strikes fear among many a Storm player.
Yeah, I actually lost to that card once before. I remember I was learning how to play Modern ad nauseum, and I just assumed that Angel's Grace was split second. I was like, oh, I'm going to be fine. I totally killed myself.
Right.
Wow.
Triggered abilities.
Well, for those who don't know, Eidolon of the Great Revel is 2 red mana for a 2/2 rare enchantment creature spirit. Originally came out in Journey into Nyx. Journey Nyx was pretty poor, but at least this was a nice, nice highlight.
One of
from
the
it.
few saving graces of the set was Eidolon.
But whenever a player casts a spell with converted mana cost 3 or less, it deals 2 damage to that player.
And I have to say, there's nothing sweeter than watching a burn player kill themselves to their Eidolons. That feels great.
You can get locked under your own Eidolon sometimes.
It's true. Gotta be careful. That said, congratulations to Mr. James Robb. Please contact us via Twitter moderator, Reddit moderators, Twitter. Yeah. Aaron's probably has you blocked, so it's fine. Facebook's a thing.
You want to come into our live show and be like, hey, girl.
Twitch chat's good. Some way on the social spectrum to talk to us.
Smoke signals, pigeons, carrier pigeons.
But today, we are talking about War of the Spark.
Oof.
This set has been unbelievable. Yeah. The Japanese alternate artwork planeswalkers were unbelievable and have been just exploding. Unbelievable.
How are those selling?
Amazingly. And the whole set, at this point, prices are starting to really go up because people are having a hard time getting more of War of the Spark, period.
Yeah.
And the cards are terrific, showing up in all kinds of formats. The limited format is we're playing Cube, for God's sake. We're all just playing with bazookas at this point, just blowing each other up with these ridiculous haymakers.
I've heard that limited is very polarizing. The people that love it adore it, and the people that hate it have said it's one of the worst limiteds they've ever played. There's no in between there.
It's also very, very, very different between sealed and draft. I would say that the sealed environment is pretty miserable. I've been having a lot of fun with the draft environment, though. It is way different than any other kind of limited that I've ever experienced. That'll happen when you have uncommon planeswalkers.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, it felt very much like a cube sealed, where if you get the right synergies, it's just bananas. And you're still playing with very powerful stuff. And it's the most dirtily sealed format I've ever seen. You just play everything good, play all of your fixing, cross your fingers, let's go. And just bombs blow off.
Well, I've also heard the fixing is not great.
Correct.
If you get it, it's awesome. But if you don't, it's, what I mean? That's the polarizing part, Either you get the green fixing guys or you don't. And then you're like, I can't splash anything. And so I can't play all my cool planeswalkers or spells or whatever. Yeah, right. But I'm loving the hell out of it personally.
Good.
I like crazy, powerful stuff. And that's exactly what War of the Spark is.
It's making a huge impact on every format, which I will certainly talk about when it comes to my cards, because that's one of my criteria is I look for cards that are powerful enough to see play in older formats. And if you can, anybody can make it in standard, but if you can make it elsewhere.
Wow.
Almost everybody can make it in standard.
Almost.
Can't really make it in standard.
Who can't?
Ignite the Beacon.
Ignite the Beacon.
Oh.
Cries
We'll see.
Cries and
We'll
pie
see.
bet. Cries and pie bet.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll see if it gets there. It's got time.
I wasn't feeling great after I saw what you would describe as a Super Friends deck. Not even give me the one of in the sideboard. Just give me the one of. That's all I'm looking for.
Yeah, the big issue with Ignite, which was going to be on my list so that I could give you these daggers, but I decided to cut it, is that it needs to be in a non-blue Super Friends deck because blue just has card draw and has Teferi at 5. So like, why are we running Ignite if we're just playing that? So this would need to be like an Abzan Super Friends deck, which I've seen, these like weird Vraska, like Vraska Golgari Queen, Sorin, sort of mid-rangey decks. Maybe they want an Ignite the Beacon to go get their one of 6 mana Planeswalker, corner case Planeswalker, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not looking too good so far there, buddy.
Wow. So you didn't want to give me that dagger, so you cut it, huh? Okay.
I cut it from the list.
That was a dagger.
My honorable mention.
You know how knives are sharp. All right. We'll move on here.
That was like a spork.
That was great. That said, thanks, obviously, CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring that giveaway. And let's move on here to our number 10. We only have a few hires sprinkled, just a little sprinkled. But that said, Ruben, let's kick us off with number 10.
So my number 10 is near and dear to my heart because it is a red, the reddest of the red, and it is one of the main characters of the whole shebang here, and has impacted the mono red deck in standard in an interesting way. Chandra Fire Artisan is my number 10.
Nice.
2 colorless red gets you a legendary planeswalker Chandra with starting loyalty of 4 and has a static ability of whenever one or more loyalty counters are removed from Chandra Fire Artisan, she deals that much damage to target opponent or planeswalker. +1, exile the top card of your library you may play at this turn. -7, exile the top 7 cards of your library you may play them this turn. Chandra Fire Artisan, it sits in an interesting place because we live in a heyday of red card advantage with Experimental Frenzy, Risk Factor, and Light Up the Stage. You wouldn't think that Chandra would have a day in the sun there. And yet, that static ability of immediately going up to 5 and allowing you to draw an extra card every turn is really, really, really good. It's way better than the Vance's Blasting Cannons that people thought that it would be. Probably worse than Torch of Defiance, but there's plenty of room in there to be good. I've started seeing a split of Chandra and Experimental Frenzies in the mono red deck.
I've seen some very spirited debates on Twitter about which is better. I had one this morning with the guy I was talking to where he was all about Fire Artisan, and I was like, it looks kind of fair.
It does. It certainly does. 1 extra card a turn is no Experimental Frenzy with Runaway Steam King in play. But I'm typically seeing like a 3-1 or a 2-2 split in there. I've also seen a couple of heavier red strategies, sort of like the Treasure Red decks try to adopt Chandra. There's a lot of discussion around this card among some big names out there. Abe Stein had a full article on Chandra on Star City Games. Patrick and Mike from Top Level obviously had a whole episode on the card. I just think it's very, very good.
I love that she triggers spectacle. Like, yeah, I was the girl who loved Rakdos when I was at the pre-release, and so that was the first thing I saw. I was like, light up the stage.
Yeah, I will. I mean, first of all, it's a little weird how we have normalized that red gets so much card advantage these days. Like this,
I love it.
This card 5 years ago would have been unbelievable. Would have been freaking out. Like there's nothing close that ever said +1 draw a card in mono red, which is crazy.
I love it.
And now it's like, yeah, it's fine. What else does it do? And you're like, but it draws you a card every turn. This was, and as of the recording of this, note that a mono red deck with 4 Chandra Fire Artisans in it won the first large standard event, which was the SCG Open thing.
Yeah.
So.
And this is the red that I like. You know, I famously don't have the mountain hung up. You know, you mentioned Eidolon and the Great Revel. That doesn't speak to me. But Experimental Frenzy was enough to make me want to buy the red Challenger deck. I didn't because it was Basura for reasons Evan has talked about on previous shows. But cards like this make me want to play red. Chandra, I would play a red deck with her. I would play Experimental Frenzy. I love that they're taking red in this direction.
Yeah, it's really cool. So that said, we'll move on here. Number 10 for Aaron. What you got?
So the spoiler season this time around was a little bit contentious, the preview season, because it was my understanding that literally every single card was assigned to somebody. And so normally if a leak happens, it's painful enough, but because there is a possibility that maybe your card wasn't taken, maybe that card wasn't assigned to somebody, but the leaks hurt this so much more this time around because literally every card was spoken for. And so anytime a leak happened, somebody was going to be impacted by that. And there were so many leaks of this set. I mean, we had all of the God Eternals were out before they were supposed to. Some of them were. I know all of the Planeswalkers just about were. Like, it was really, really difficult to keep a lid on that. And it was really great to see people kind of uniting to say that we are not going to cover this. We're not going to talk about this. Mythic Spoiler famously put on the tag of like, you can choose to see like official previews and things like that. But we also were not immune to this. We managed to make it all the way until the day of our preview, the day it was scheduled to go out before ours was leaked as well. But our card was good. Everything about it is awesome. And so my number 10 is Tyrant Scorn.
Yeah.
So Tyrant Scorn is blue and black. It's an instant. You can choose one. You can either destroy target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less, or you can return target creature to its owner's hand. It's so cheap. It's so efficient. The package of the story moment, you know, that you have Gideon using the Black Blade to try to attack Bolas and failing, the sword breaking, the Black Blade is broken. What? So you have the flavor text, you have the art, you have what the card does. The card is good. You know, it was just a win on every level, and I was so grateful that we were given this card.
Now, I read this on the internet, so it had to be true. But someone had mentioned that this destroys more than half of all the creatures in Standard, and clearly bounces most of the rest, everything without hexproof or whatever. Right. But yeah, this card is a giant house and is like almost an auto-include in black-blue, and everyone who doesn't have it yet in black-blue hasn't either played with it or hasn't seen somebody else play with it, because it's always good. Like, it's always good.
Yeah. The Esper Control decks are playing this over Cast Down, which had been a staple, the staple 2-mana removal card. Yeah. But this being able to deal with your random legendary creatures, not to mention Gideon Blackblade gets bounced, which is a deal with Tyrant Scorn. And obviously Cast Down doesn't work in a multitude of ways against Gideon, and Gideon being a part of that Celestia Tokens deck that did so well this past weekend as well. Tyrant Scorn is a spectacular Magic card. 2 mana for the choose one. I mean, I would pay 2 mana for Smother almost regardless anyway if they just reprinted Smother.
Right.
Is allowing you the other out option of being able to bounce your opponent's Shalai or Lyra or Galta or something along those lines is a huge deal as well.
Right. I mean, this is the byproduct of having a best of one mentality where it's always good. It's good when you don't have a, converting mana cost 3 or less, or when you just need to bounce a giant monster, when they try to enchant your thing, like however that needs to happen, this can answer it. And that's honestly like, that's why we're in such a high power level environment, because so many things has to do so much. That said, talking about higher power level, this is the card that like literally the jaw dropped. I could not believe it. I honest to God, this is one of those like, really? Now, Wizards has put things into formats too late sometimes. Kataki Wars Wage didn't show up until Affinity had literally ruined Magic. Shatterstorm was in Mirrored and Block, but it wasn't enough at the time to really matter. But what Wizards said was, look, we're giving you 37 Planeswalkers, okay, including the buy box. And so what we're going to show you is the exact spell you run when you're tired of playing the Planeswalker decks and you just want to destroy them completely. The Elder Spell is the signature spell that Nicol Bolas cast to destroy these Planeswalkers, to get all the sparks from them. And you get all of it. 2 black for a rare sorcery that the first sentence, all you needed was the first sentence.
Yeah.
Destroy any number of target Planeswalkers. But we're not done.
Nope.
Choose a Planeswalker you control, put 2 loyalty counters on it for each Planeswalker destroyed this way. So you get to not only destroy their stuff, you can even run a strategy where you're destroying your stuff so you can ultimate your Planeswalkers. You get it both ways. It's the ultimate stopgap. It's the ultimate answer when you're just like, I'm tired of playing against the Super Friends, whatever. It's like, well, here you go. Because a couple years ago, when there was no stopgap on the format. There was no pithy needle for Aetherworks Reservoir. It was just a completely madcap. Imrakul had just ran rampant. There was nothing that was
hate for Delirium.
no graveyard hate, no activated ability hate, no real great artifact hate. Energy was just doing whatever the hell it wanted to do. There was no way to get rid of energy counters that made any sense, and it was just a mess. And so now you have this incredibly high power level environment, but you also have an incredibly powerful answer to what they're trying to do.
I remember the first time I read this card, I didn't understand the rules, and I was trying to find a catch where it was like, oh, well, 2 mana, but like I have to have a Planeswalker, so this card is Garbo. And my friends were like, oh no, you don't need a Planeswalker. And I was like, that's a huge, because to me, that seems like something Wizards would do. You know, how many times have you seen a sweet card and there's an alternate cost, or there's an additional cost, there's a catch involved? There's no catch. You don't even need another Planeswalker. That is ridiculous for 2 black mana. Woof.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, we discussed, you know, how much it costs to kill a Planeswalker and all this other crap. And, well, it's kind of like 2 or 3 mana because of Hero's Downfall and blah, blah, blah. And no, it's just 2 mana, kill any number and upside. And upside. So, we want to hear to number 9. Ruben, what's your number 9?
You know, I like the God Eternals and all, but I prefer my deities to be a bit more on the primal side.
Oh boy.
Specifically as foretold by the Zur-Ta, the druids of the old ways, who pray at the altar of the powers that controlled Ravnica before the city. Or as Evan would say, back when the rocks were soft, or when this was all trees, or back when I was relevant. In any case...
Wow! Wow! Shots fired.
Shots fired, don't worry. But
whoa,
the Boar God, the bringer of the end rays of Ravnica, as prophesied by the Gruul clans, has come, and it is Ilharg the Raze-Boar.
Yeah.
3 colorless red for a legendary creature, Boar God, gets you a 6/6 trample for 5. The rest of it could be flavor text, and this would probably have blown somebody's mind several years ago. But we're not done. Whenever Ilharg the Raze-Boar attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Return that creature to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. And has the God Eternal text of when Ilharg the Raze-Boar dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it into its library 3rd from the top. Ilharg the Raze-Boar has already spawned some hilarious decks. It is the timmiest Timmy card. Whether you're putting in a Galta or you're putting in something that has a when this hits your opponent effect, it is just a ton of fun in concert with things like Rhythm of the Wild, other ways to give it haste.
Samut, I've played it with Samut, plus Ilharg was a fun one.
Samut Spirit?
Samut.
Samut
Spirit.
Samut Sprint. You know, there's a number of good ways to give Ilharg haste.
Seen play in multiple formats. It's been seen play in Grishelbrand of all things, and Modern. I mean, being able to do that whole thing. You know, people have been playing around with it in Legacy with like the mono red sneak attack list, or even the show and tell list. Just, you know, you're so prepared to deal with show and tell. Fine, here's a 6/6 trampler boar that you have to deal with. No one in Legacy's running removal. Like what? What do you mean?
What's a removal?
Right. And so you can't bolt it. Okay. And so, yeah, again, just seeing play in multiple formats. It's hilarious.
Wow. Yeah. This is just the timmiest Timmy that ever Timmy to Timmy. Like this is here to bring you like huge stories, giant moments, big, huge plays that are super fun and neat and interesting. And they had to have the red one. Hazaret was back on Amonkhet, so they couldn't really bring Hazaret over.
Hazaret's holding down the fort in Amonkhet.
I will take this as the replacement though. I've been playing this a ton on MTG Arena. I'm literally waiting to get another Mythic Wild card so I can play with like the deck that I want to have 3 Ilhargs.
Right.
No, I only have 2.
It's got a great animation too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's terrific. So that card is awesome. Aaron, what's your number 9?
If there is anything that can be played from the graveyard, I've done it. I have Sharoom EDH for when I want to bring artifacts back. I played Starfield of Nyx when Constellation was a thing, and I brought enchantments back. I love a good Life from the Loam, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So I love bringing my lands back, and obviously I love bringing creatures back from the graveyard. But one thing I've not really had the pleasure of doing, mostly because Wizards won't let me, is bringing a Planeswalker back from the graveyard. We had Obzadot's Aid, but that's like 5 mana for like a Planeswalker. Like, at that rate, I better get dinner on a back rub. Like, it better be a lot for 5 mana. But then this card came along and blew my mind. And I cannot wait to steal everybody's planeswalkers with Command the Dreadhorde.
Nice.
So Command the Dreadhorde is 4 colorless and 2 black. It's a sorcery. Choose any number of target creature and or planeswalker cards in graveyards. Command the Dreadhorde deals damage to you equal to the total converted mana cost of those cards. Put them onto the battlefield under your control, not in your hand, none of that. They're yours. And that little like damage thing that's supposed to be a setback, we have plenty of ways around that. It's fine. I cannot wait to use this. I remember the minute I saw this, I was like, and like, it's just everything somebody like me would want to do. And it's just fun. It's Wizards letting down their hair a little bit. Again, you mentioned sort of the conversations that have been had about how much does it cost to kill a planeswalker. 5 mana for a planeswalker res, and that was really the only one, right? Like, I don't know of any other planeswalker resurrection ability.
I don't think so. Not that
Maybe
I can
like
think of.
Yeah. So there's not many out there. So the fact that they're even giving us this, I'll take it.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, ultimately, this is it's super fun with the Wanderer, which is nice. This is another one of those like sweet Timmy cards of just like it does this big grandiose thing, and if you're clever enough, you might not die from it, and then you'll kill him with it. And that's great.
It's just such a flavorful thing of, you really do get a chance to be Liliana with the Chain Veil. Like, you play Magic to feel something, and what could be cooler, making you feel like a necromancer of like, yes, and just raise everything, and it hurts a little bit, but yes, it feels amazing.
Nice. Well, move on here to my number 9. It's basically a callback. Wizards does things where they just make it too cheap or too easy, and then they go, oops, we broke it, and then they ban it and they move on. And it's not often that they go back and revisit effects that have had that happen. And not only that, but to make effects that, because you're paying an extra mana, well, you might as well get a bonus. And we might as well realize that somehow Galta showed up on Ravnica to kick everybody's butt. Finale of Devastation is my number 9. It is a green, and X sorcery. It is mythic. You search your library and or graveyard for a creature with a converted mana cost X or less and put it on the battlefield. And if you search your library this way, you shuffle it. If X is 10 or more, because why not? Creatures you control get +X and gain haste until end of turn. Yay.
I had a lot of fun with this card during our preview event. A listener sent me an Elves list, which I never dreamed in a million years I would enjoy, but I actually did really well with it. I was 4-2.
Nice.
And, for what it does, I mean, being able to get a Ronus, being able to get a Beast Collar, being able to get even just the little Elvish Collar Lord. I mean, just being able to get what you want. You don't even need to go ultimate with this. Just doing it, just using it in like a fair capacity is still great. Like, I was very impressed with this card. And also, green is the most likely color to actually get that 10 going. It's not hard for green to ramp. And so I look forward to seeing all the ways that people are going to break this. And the fact that it does graveyard too, green's not wishes it could do that. Like, I love it.
So there's an infinite combo in standard with this card, and Naru Meha.
Oh boy.
Yes.
If you have Ral Storm's Conduit and you play your finale for 4, go get a Naru Meha with the copy the finale, deal the damage, copy the finale, deal the damage, and because it gets it back from your graveyard and they're legendary and can kill each other, then you just keep going and going and going. It's Splinter Twin is what people are calling it.
Oh boy.
And like standard Splinter Twin, and it's like, I don't know about that. That's like 6 mana and a 4 mana planeswalker to try to whatever. People just want to play Splinter Twin. I'll let them have it. It's probably not good, but it exists. Finale of Devastation, though, is a pretty excellent card, and having a dinosaur show up to just wreak havoc on Ravnica, we're back style. It's pretty great.
Pretty awesome. Green Sun Zenith is busted.
It's completely ridiculous.
So this is a nice fixed version, really, like actual factual fixed, which I think is nice. So moving here to number 8. Aaron, what's your number 8?
So my number 8 is my baby. I have characters that I latch onto, and I root for villains. I was never somebody who rooted for most of the Gatewatch. I didn't root for Gideon. I didn't root for Elsbeth. I rooted for the villains. And there was one villain in particular that I really loved. And I was so sad and I was so mad when Bolas did her dirty the first time around. But She is back. She's obviously been to the dentist. She's had some work done, and she looks amazing. And she's actually good. I think, Evan, I'll never forget when I saw you playing this card, and you were having the time of your life. My number 8 is God Eternal Bantu.
Nice.
So God Eternal Bantu is 3 colorless and 2 black. She's a legendary creature, zombie god, a 5/6 with menace. When God Eternal Bantu enters the battlefield, sacrifice any number of other permanents, then draw that many cards. When God Eternal Bantu dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it into its owner's library 3rd from the top. This was the first of the God Eternals that was officially previewed. Gorgeous card, a big fan of Bantu, and that ETB. I mean, like, if it dies, you just get to do it again. Like, whoop, I'll come back in 3 turns. And then, oh my God, you were doing shenanigans with an aristocrat style deck. She's currently going for $6 right now. I think other people are looking for ways to kind of do things with her too. But I was so happy that they gave her a good card, and that's my baby.
It's so good. It's so good. Like, this card was so insane.
Oh.
Like, well, I mean, for my sealed event, my sealed was so stupid when I went to my pre-release that I got God Eternal Bantu, but I never actually played her because I didn't want to sacrifice any of my stuff. But you don't have to. She's just a 5-mana, 5/6 menace. That's where you start. That's level 0.
But when you have the Fireblade artist and you have the Judas and the Afterlife cards,
oh yeah, it's
so good.
It doesn't take many triggers, and even just like I would sacrifice my own lands because like the deck, the deck could operate on like 3 mana, so I would sack 2 lands, usually draw at least 1 land with the rest of them, and just keep going. It was crazy.
With so many other cards that interact favorably with sacrifice, things like Mayhem Devil and Cruel Celebrant, being able to sack off those extra lands is huge because once
Planeswalkers,
extra Planeswalkers obviously goes really well with Teysa.
Tokens.
Oh, yeah. Any of those kind of aristocrat style strategies, be they Mardu, black white, or black red, Bantu is probably the top of your curve. It's just this body, hard to block, and draws you a bunch of cards when it enters play.
All right, so that is a terrific card. Ruben, what's your number 8?
My number 8 is a card that has had a long and illustrious history in Standard over many years. Got reprinted and also is reprinted as a promotional card, which historically means that it'll be good again. This one has the pedigree, it has the clout, it has those bona fides that you look for, and I've already started playing against them in those control decks that just want to have an early body that is able to replace itself. My next entry is Augur of Bolas. Augur of Bolas is a colorless and a blue for a Merfolk Wizard. It is a 1/3. When Augur of Bolas enters the battlefield, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal an instant or sorcery card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. This is exactly the kind of card that you want as an early thing to stop your opponent's fanatical firebrands or gutter bones, to be able to replace itself and find a counter spell for your turn 3, maybe. Augur of Bolas, I mean, what can you say about it that hasn't already been said? It's great.
Yeah, there was no question that Augur of Bolas was going to see play this time around, but the question was in what capacity, because the last time Augur of Bolas was good, we had blink effects. You were playing Restoration Angel, and so you had things that you could use to really abuse it, and also your top end was like Supreme Verdict and Sphinx's Revelation, and so not only do you not have the blinking effect, but you also don't necessarily have the top end that the decks had before that don't make it as exciting. You are leaning on more Teferi now, and there was the seal-aways and the enchantments and things, and it really does rely on instants and sorceries. And so people were wondering, is it going to be a Grixis thing? Is it going to be an Esper thing? How are you going to play it? And will it play the same way twice? Will it be as good? And, apparently it seems to be doing quite well. So I was really pleased to see that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the Esper decks these days are winning with Teferi and Liliana, as opposed to with just sheer card advantage of Sphinx's Revelation and 1 Aetherling.
Yeah.
So we live in a way different world, in addition to the fact that some of the control decks are more like these weird prison decks that have Planeswalkers as their 3 and 4 drops. And so Augur of Bolas loses value there as well.
Yeah, but it's been, in some of the lists I saw that featured it, also had Commence the Endgame, which I think is a huge finisher that helps with Augur. And of course, you have your card draw and Vraska's Contempt and all that good stuff. Augur Bolas was good back then, and it's good now in a weirdly different way. It's sort of like sort of a unique way. I like that. I appreciate that in different sort of, different sets and different environments, you kind of think about it entirely differently. And that's really interesting. And those to me are the best reprints anyway, where you're just like, oh, it's not obvious that I need to slam 4 augers into anything blue in this format.
Exactly.
If I need it, it's important. And that's really cool. That said, there used to be a card in Odyssey, and it did a lot of stuff.
Oh boy.
But the key of doing a lot of stuff is that you had to have all the targets for this particular spell. The spell was called Decimate. Now, Decimate, traditionally, like as the dictionary has told us, is to take 1/10 out of everything, 1/10 out of stuff. Now, later, pop culture...
That's the Deca prefix.
Right. And so later, pop culture said, screw that, and we just mean it's going to destroy everything, blah, 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 blah. Well, who cares about Decimate when you have Casualties of War?
Oof.
One of the best, if not one of the best casual rares in the entire set. Maybe there's one better and we'll talk about it. But Casualties of War is 2 green, 2 black, 2 generic mana for a rare sorcery that says choose one or more destroy target, artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. Any of those, all of those. I have cast this and had 5 targets, and oh boy, does it feel amazing. This card is great. If you're in green-black and you're not playing this in your commander decks, what are you doing with your life? This card is great. I love it. There's not much else I can say about it. It does everything, and there's no drawback. We live in a no drawback world, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I was one of those people who used to use the word decimate incorrectly. I remember somebody called me out on Twitter where I was at a tournament and I was like, I'm going to decimate all these people. And they were like, you're going to leave them at 10%? Mm-hmm. And I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, and someone gave me like the definition and I was like, whatever. And I blocked them. But now it's like, now I know like what the word means and I don't use it anymore. But I was definitely one of those people who like, before it became acceptable to mean just destroy, I was that person where it's like, excuse me, it means 10%. Like,
and you were like, block. Thanks for playing.
Yeah, it was, there's an interesting etymology behind the word decimate. It was actually... Basically, if like a huge group of forces, it was a necessary evil that the Romans used to punish large groups of people for sedition or mutiny or whatever.
Oh, they take 1/10 of all their stuff?
Well, it was worse than that. They would divide groups into soldiers of 10. They would draw lots, and whoever drew the short lot would get executed by the other 9. Yeah, it was brutal. So it was for punishing huge groups of people. Anyway, Casualties of War, similarly, also bad for huge groups of people. Also is a ton of fun as like an effect. Like just reading the type line makes me feel happy. Choose all of the things. Like do whatever you want, bro.
And very Golgari at that. Golgari has patterned itself as being the color combination that can destroy anything. Assassin's Trophy, Abrupt Decay, Gaze of Granite. That's just what it does. And I like that they find new ways to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Casualties of War has almost my favorite line of text. Plane-wide celebration saying choose 4, you may choose more, you can choose the same mode more than once. I think I like as a better line of text, but I really like Casualties of War.
But as an effect, Casualties will get us there.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's move on here to number 7. Aaron, what's number 7?
It was so hard to be quiet about this card. So even though we said publicly that we were not going to talk about leaks, unofficial previews on our shows, we were talking about them privately in our little Google Hangouts. So like we would still talk about cards that we saw that we were excited about. And I knew about this card well before it officially came out. And I was in awe. Like I was so geeked for this card. And I couldn't wait for it to come out officially so that I could talk about it with our listeners and our friends and everybody like that. And then when it finally came out, nothing made me happier than finding out she was good. She made a huge splash in Bant mid-range decks this past weekend at the Open. My good friends over at Commander Quarters, who are one of my favorite YouTube channels, just announced that she's going to be their next subject. So I am all ready with my credit card to build that EDH deck. My number 7 is God Eternal Oketra.
Nice.
So Oketra is 3 colorless and 2 white. She's a legendary creature, zombie god with double strike. A 3/6. Whenever you cast a creature spell, doesn't have to resolve. Create a 4/4 black zombie warrior creature token with vigilance. When God Eternal Oketra dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it into its owner's library third from the top. This is another one of those cards that we mentioned a little bit with that finality. You don't even have to like try to break. Like you can just do fair things and still it's that powerful that it just does what it does. You don't have to try to really maximize this. You can just play a fair Bant deck and just spew creatures. It's totally fine. She's currently going for like $10 right now, which I never would have dreamed looking at her. I'm really excited to see what people are going to do with her in EDH because mono white is not great in EDH, to be quite honest, but I never cared about Oketra the first time around, but damn it, I am ready and raring to go.
I think this is constructed playable, and we've seen a little bit in this past weekend of like it's showing up in real deal decks.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's great.
The top 8 decks of the Open this past weekend from Harlan Führer and Rudy Brixa, who are well-known names on the Open series, had 3 God Eternal Oketra each in their Bant mid-range decks. So
nice. And you can find Rudy's writing at coolstuffinc.com.
Oh, boy.
Oh, just drop that right in there for you.
And this was a really interesting take on the deck. This really centers around Vivian Champions of the Wilds, which combos really nicely with the God Eternal effect. Deal with it and you drop a Vivian, just get the God Eternal right back. Not to mention the fact that it gets more creatures to make more 4/4s. The vigilance is super relevant. Card is super good.
So God Eternal Oketra certainly showing to be awesome, and that's great. Like this is one of those where like it looks great, but you're like, is it really that good? Because it seems insane.
Right. Well, the thing is that when God Eternal Oketra was officially previewed in the set, we were already overloaded. It was maximum overdrive on everything. We were like, man, there are all these gods and all these planeswalkers.
It was the last God Eternal, and it was one of the last cards. Like they really did wait. And so those of us who had to stew on it were just like, oh, I know there's something awesome, but I can't tell you.
Because the giant cat had to kill the Pegasus.
Yeah,
they had to shoot the horse.
Story-wise, you do have Bantu and Oketra famously teaming up to take on Bolas, which is amazing.
The good news is the cat came back to the good side.
Wow. All right.
The cat got the cream, and the cream are 4/4 zombies of vigilance. Okay.
Hey, y'all.
Ruben,
what's your number 7?
My number 7 is the first hire on someone else's list.
Oh, well, okay then. Well, I can tell you about my number 7. We've brought it up before in this very show. This is definitely one of my favorite spells to come out of the set. I love it because it's big, it's shiny, it's flashy, it's powerful. It's everything I wanted a spell called Commence the Endgame to be. It's awesome. Yeah. It's 2 blue, 4 generic mana for a rare instant. This spell can't be countered because reasons. Draw 2 cards, then amass X, where X is the number of cards in your hand. Put X +1/+1 counters on an army you control. If you don't control one, make a 0/0 black zombie army creature token first. And quote, even gods shall kneel. That's
nice.
It's so good. It's already showing up in standard constructed deck, which is great. It's amazing in limited. It seems pretty awesome in multiplayer. I don't know. I don't play that format, but I know in the formats that I care about, this card is nuts, and I love it.
The art is amazing. Noah Bradley killing it with this one. And famously, you look at how diminutive Liliana is. Like, Liliana is somebody that normally consumes a card. Like, she takes up the frame, but you look at this and like, she's so tiny, and that to me is like you have Bolas. It almost looks like, dare I say, almost like a religious painting of like you have Bolas, the ties to godhood. You have the Eternals on either side of him. You have the immortal sun in the air. And on the bottom, you have like the portal and this tiny Liliana. And it's just everything about it is just, it's so good.
Really felt very Guillermo del Toro kind of labyrinthy, like the symmetry, the eldritch nature was really all came together in the art. The spell itself, of course, drawing cards can't be countered, instant speed. That is all you need for a card advantage card in standard. 6 mana is a steep cost, but you're getting what you pay for, which is good news out of this card. Really good card. Obviously, it was ironic that this card was named many, many, many months before Avengers Endgame was named.
Way back.
Way back, and yet serendipity, parallel evolution being what it is. But in any case, this card is really cool, and it all came together in this card.
Yeah, absolutely terrific. All right, so we'll move on here to number 6. I don't have one. It's higher on someone else's list, so that sucks. Ruben, what's your number 6?
I also don't have one. This is
bunch of bums.
Aaron, You got us?
Cool. I'll handle this. So I lovingly told the story about how when I was watching the War of the Spark panel in a McDonald's, I cried because I was so excited over the Liliana trailer. I was also very excited about this card. That day at McDonald's was just a ride for me. This was one of the cards they spoiled during the panel, and I just could not feel my face. I saw this card and I was like, oh! I couldn't word, I couldn't think. I was amazing. I got the chance to play with this card during our preview event. I was running a blue-black kind of mid-range deck. And one of these is fine, but when you get two, it is dumb. My number 6 is Dreadhorde Invasion. So Dreadhorde Invasion is 1 colorless and a black. It's an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life. There's no name. You lose 1 life and amass 1. Whenever a zombie token you control with power 6 or greater attacks, it gains lifelink until end of turn. I got so much amusement just watching people try to deal with this, just to have it come back. I'm like, whoop, all right, thanks. There's my other token. I also came very close to killing myself to my own Dreadhorde Invasion, which was fine. I'll take it. But the card is just great. There's been all sorts of names for it, of Zombie Blossom, Better Blossom. We essentially have like a Bitter Blossom type card in Standard. I never thought we would see that. And the fact that it's zombies, the fact that you can sort of gain back all of the life that you lost by giving your big zombie lifelink if it's able to survive. It doesn't even have to be the zombie that you made with this. Whenever a zombie token with power 6 or greater attacks, there are so many different kinds of zombie tokens that are possible in Standard right now, much less if you put this in the commander deck and all the other kinds of zombies that are possible. I love all the things you can do with this, the flavor of it, and I couldn't even when I first saw it.
I mean, I don't think it's at this point. I think it's not Bitter Blossom.
Of course.
But the cool, right, all right. I don't want to make another Bitter Blossom, to be clear. But what is really interesting is that bottom line of text down there about the lifelink thing. I just feel like we're in a world where even 5 years ago, they would have never have put that line of text on there. They would have given you the first one and see what you can do with it and make it work and blah, 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 and gain some life some other way. There wasn't built into the card itself is a way to make the card even more awesome. That's unique.
It is a stopgap solution so that if your opponent is playing a Bitter Blossom or playing a Force Field effect, you don't just lose to your own chump, getting chump blocked over and over and over again, which I think is really nice.
Which is kind of cool. Again, this to me is that it's just like sort of that next level of design of like, we can make this card good and then we can make it better and it's still,
but without breaking the bank. Yeah, exactly.
It's still okay. It's still, powerful and serviceable, but not overpowering. Yep. That's terrific. All right, let's move on here to number 5 as we were saved. To one of my, I'm going to start off my number 5 here because I love this card so much. I have been playing with this card from either the preview event all the way up until literally just a few hours ago I was playing with this card. It slices, it dices, and does so many things. It's like Precinct of Hero 1, but better. It's doing some crazy copy stuff, but better. It fits in a variety of strategies, and it's great. I love Saheeli, Sublime Artificer. So good.
Really good.
It is 2 Izzet mana. That's blue, red, and a generic mana. So 3 mana total for a 5 loyalty uncommon legendary planeswalker Saheeli. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token, and -2: her only ability. Target artifact you control becomes a copy of another target artifact or creature you control until end of turn, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. So my current Super Dirtle deck is this blue-white thing where I play a bunch of silly card spells like all the Karns. I play all the Karns. And I play
right. You're playing Karn Troll.
Yeah, that's my Karn Troll deck. And so I'm doing this, and I'm just like every time I do something dirtily, it makes a 1/1. I play a treasure map, it makes a 1/1. I play the
I can't even.
Exactly. And I play Karn and it gives me 1. I play Ugin and it gives me 1. And so all of that slow incremental advantage not only keeps me alive so I can keep dirtling. My end game is make a construct with Karn, Scion of Urza, and then have Saheeli copy it, and then kill them out of nowhere. Literally like 26 them out of nothing. And it's beautiful, and it's great, and I love it, and Saheeli is just so cool, and there's a variety of places it can fit. You could literally just throw her in mono red, and she's great. Like, she doesn't need to be amazing. You both make a token, you copy it, and make it into a runaway Steamkin, and then you start putting counters on the freaking token like it happens. It's amazing. Saheeli's great.
Good in the feather deck, good in the mono red deck, good in the mono blue like Tezzeret traditional Karn Troll deck, good in that blue white thing you were talking about. Good in I'm playing this weird blue white planeswalker deck where all of the planeswalkers are like these weird prison pieces that come together, like both Dovins and Karn and
Teo.
Berries and Teo and Kazmina. You just like all of the garbage comes together, and if you just throw enough Planeswalkers on the board, then you win. But if you have Saheeli, then you're actually impacting the board. You're actually able to win the game. Saheeli's the only card I've seen that makes Mox Amber good, because you can play a turn 3 Saheeli, immediately get a 1/1 off your Mox Amber, which I think is really notable, considering how much hype there was for Mox Amber, and no one has played any of it, and now I'm playing it in my deck. Saheeli is a spectacularly good card, also good in Drakes. And yeah, I mean, it's a 3-mana threat. That 5 loyalty just sits there. It's tough to deal with, and it protects itself, and it's just spectacular.
And the alternate artwork, Japanese version, is just,
as they all are,
unbelievable. Like, it's one of my, like, they're all great. Obviously, I think they're all great, but for me, it's in like the top 5. I think it's colorful, it's beautiful, it pops. Like, I've actually pulled one out of a pack. It's great. Like, Saheeli is terrific. That said, Ruben, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is going to make Aaron very upset, because it's time to talk about Allosaurus Rider for a minute. So no one cuts deep like modern people who are brewing. All right. They found this rare from Cold Snap, which is how a lot of really garbage decks start. Is that there's a rare from Cold Snap that I'm going to break real quick. It's called Allosaurus Rider. It's in the cycle with like Commandeer and Fury of the Horde, which we've seen broken previously. It's the pitch 2 cards of a color to play it for free, and it costs $1 billion. Specifically 7. So Allosaurus Rider says that you can remove 2 green cards in your hand from the game rather than pay its mana cost, and you just get like an 0/1 or whatever. But then you play my number 5 and turn it into a Gristlebrand and have yourself a party. My number 5 is Neoform. And it's the Why Are You Like This card from so for a green and a blue mana, you get an uncommon sorcery. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a creature. Search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, then shuffle your library. So for those of you playing along at home, basically you play your Allosaurus Rider on turn 1 in a variety of ways. You get some extra mana, typically from things like Chancellor of the Tangle and Gemstone Caverns, and then you play a turn 1 Neoform to go get a Gristlebrand, at which point you draw your whole deck. You have a bunch of Simian Spirit Guides to play your 1 Seismic Assault and throw every land in your deck at your opponent. And that's what the deck does. There are also applications for Neoform in Standard. It is Prime Speaker Vanifar's 5 through 7 or 8 to be able to have that sort of toolbox strategy work. This is, of course, the Birthing Pod effect put onto a spell. What they did was they made the broken repeatable version first and made the spell later, which is not how you're supposed to do it. But Neoform, even not being repeatable, just being a 2-mana sorcery, it's cutting the mustard already.
I mean, I appreciate the Birthing Pod effect. I think the Birthing Pod effect is cool. I think Eldritch Evolution never broke anything, so they're like, fine, we'll make it a little cheaper. For what it's worth, here's something I'm expecting. For example, I'm expecting a 1-mana clone that can only clone a converted mana cost 1 or 2 creature. That's what I'm expecting at this point.
Neat.
Which I think would be really cool, right? It would be neat. There's certain types of effects, copying spells, for example, forking spells. Oh my God, they're starting to put that on everything to where they literally put it as an ability on Ral, the new Planeswalker. So taking these abilities that at this point we've really, kind of associated with certain things, whether they're broken artifacts or not, in different forms, I think is really neat. And I like this stuff. And the Vanifar deck, unfortunately, isn't very good, but it sure is fun. And Neoform's part of that.
Allosaurus Rider has been bought out. I think it was what, $10? Like
they're 12 now.
Oh, I could have got in at $1, by the way. I saw that on Twitter.
We all could have got in at $1.
And I was
by
like,
the way, just go buy every Cold Snap rare. It costs 25 cents. Just buy them. Like,
buy all of them.
What's the white one do? Right?
I can't even remember what the white one does.
No one does. No one knew what the green one did until it accidentally the whole format.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out, and then I'll buy them for 50 cents. And then in 10 years, when they accidentally print Neoform that combos with it, I think it's like Sunscour. It's like exile all the creatures. or something like that. Whatever, it doesn't even matter.
It's probably awful. Don't worry about it.
Why are you like this? Why?
Why?
Why does this exist?
Why do you do this to yourself?
I blame you, Peter Glukowski.
Aaron,
how dare you?
What's your number 5?
My number 5 was one of those cards that I just didn't get. The reveal was very, very exciting. Doug Beyer had written an article kind of talking about the story moment, and he went into this discussion about villains and how it's important for the villain to like affect your morale, and how it was very important for this card to be introduced at a time where the characters thought they were winning. You know, you thought you just had to deal with the Eternals. Oh, we've got a handle on it. You know, we're fighting back. Well, that's cute, girl, but you got bigger fish to fry. And so that big, powerful moment where you have even bigger monstrosities to face. And I just didn't get it. People were like, this card is really good. But then I got to play in the preview event, and I played a dimmer mid-range deck, and I was a convert because this card knocked my socks off. My number 5 is Enter the God Eternals. So Enter the God Eternals is 2 colorless, 2 blue and a black. It's a sorcery. Enter the God Eternals deals 4 damage to target creature, and you gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. Woo! Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard and amass 4. So this is the story moment where Bolas unveils the God Eternals that we thought were killed by him back on Amonkhet, and he has brought them back. So you have Ronus, you have Oketra, and you have Kefnet, which is terrifying. And so the point was, you know, you dealt with all the Eternals, but now you have bigger fish to fry, and that's a really great story moment. But this was amazing. And when I got to play this card, this was sort of like the Thragtusk card. This was the card that any mid-range deck needs to kind of turn the corner. You know, you survive the early game, this gets you back and pivots you into the late game. And every time I got to cast this card, it felt amazing. Every part of the Buffalo mattered. Like there were parts where I was like, well, maybe I don't need like the amass, or maybe the 4 doesn't matter. Oh no, there were times where I was happy to see every side of this. And so obviously Esper is huge right now. This is a card that, you know, slides in very nicely with that sort of strategy. And if you're playing any sort of mid-range strategy, this is that buffer that you really, really need. And I just was very, very happy with this card.
This card kind of does everything.
Yeah.
It gets you back in the game. It gains you life. It destroys their best thing usually. And it mills away the gods. If you're in this weird god war going back and forth of who can stick Kefnet or whatever. Kefnet with this, by the way, is completely bananas. I know it's a little Winmore. It's a little Magic Christmas Land, but
Has that happened? I haven't seen that in a deck yet.
But people have been trying it. I've seen all sorts of crazy stuff with Kefnet. I've been trying Kefnet and freaking everything.
Well, sure, I've seen Kefnet, but this combo,
that Mondo combo, I have seen happen before. But again, it's not like, it's not like it's this huge standard deck yet. But I could see it because it's so good. Either way, it is a terrific moment. This is the Act 2 moment of just like, whoa, wait a minute, the stakes just got ridiculous because they're here and they're not messing around. And it's really nice.
I do really like this name too.
Yeah, it's really sweet.
It was just like, it's really like a simple name, I suppose, but it resonates and it makes perfect sense.
Right. Moving here to number 4. And, earlier I was talking about Casualties of War as one of the best casual cards ever made. Well, Wizards, they weren't going to stop. They just kept going. They just keep making it. There's also a kind of hilarious story in that Wizards, this was the official preview card for Cool Stuff, and Wizards showed it on day 1 as one of the promos, and it was like, Wizards, why did you do that? So that was fun. But Karn's Bastion is one of the best casual cards ever. It is going nowhere but up. Buy your copies now. When they're $20 in 3 years, you can thank me, because this is the exact kind of card that just goes up and up and up and up forever, because Karn's Bastion is a rare land that taps for a colorless, an actual wingding, and 4 generic mana tap, proliferate. Choose any number of permanents and or players, then give each another counter of each kind already there. And that's a colorless land that goes in every EDH deck ever that cares about counters. And no commander deck cares about counters. I mean,
and it's colorless. There are so many ways to make, an abundance of colorless mana, whether it just be Ancient Tombs, Soul Rings, Majoring Networks, Kruthix. It's not hard to keep this thing going and just whoof.
Seriously, this is just Like, it's great, and I'm glad it's great. And it's not that great in constructed, usually, because if you're proliferating and like that's happening, you're already winning anyway, is the way that I've sort of found through my testing.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
I mean, Bastion also is really particularly good with the uncommon planeswalkers.
Yeah.
The planeswalkers where they're basically one use or two use planeswalkers, like Saheeli, which we referenced earlier. There's a bunch of planeswalkers that have 5 loyalty and have -2 abilities and then static abilities. Tibalt showed up in the sideboard of all those mono red decks, being another prime example. Not that you play Karn's Bastion in those decks, but certainly if you're playing a uncommon planeswalker heavy strategy, or a strategy where you have a lot of evolve creatures, or you have a lot of ways to put +1/+1 counters on, for example, like Venerated Loxodon. I could certainly see Karn's Bastion with some sort of combo there. I love Karn's Bastion. I think it's a super good utility land, not broken. You're exactly right. It is the kind of card that every Atraxa deck is going to want. Every deck that cares about +1/+1 counters is going to want later. So get on it.
Yeah, I mean, Atraxa is the most popular commander, and this is literally the perfect land for that deck. Just get and trade for every copy you can, and later when War of the Spark leaves print, you will look like an absolute genius. That's just how these cards roll. Ruben, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is the last hire that I have on my list.
Fair enough. I've got one coming myself. Aaron, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is the only higher on my list.
Well, just got to carry that number 4 all the way to the top now, didn't we?
You know how I do. I always bring it to the top.
Mm-hmm. Wow. This is the top and bottom. Okay. Got it. Not going back there. Okay.
Just let it happen.
You just let it. Yeah.
I do.
Just relax and let it happen. Okay. All right. So if Wizards of the Coast is going to print Casualties of War, which is one of the best casual cards I've ever seen. And if they're going to print Karn's Bastion, which is possibly constructed great, but definitely one of the best casual cards I've ever seen.
For sure.
They had to print one of the best casual and competitive cards in Blast Zone. Blast Zone is amazing. This card is ridiculous. And it's engineered explosives on a land. Oh my God. Blast Zone is a rare land that enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it. Okay, untapped, by the way, untapped. Tap, add a colorless mana. X generic mana, tap, put X charge counters on it. 3 generic mana, tap, sacrifice it, destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Blast Zone. Allow me to describe how I destroyed my blue-white opponent. They said, Teferi. And I said, all right, in a turn, put all my mana into Blast Zone, get it up to 5 counters. On my turn, destroy it, do your thing, okay? And then I said, activate Karn the Great Creator, go get Crucible of Worlds, put Blast Zone back into play, scoop. Thank you. That was an act in 3 parts.
This was my number 4.
Nice.
So this was a card.
My number 7.
This was another one of those cards that had been unofficially previewed before it officially was. I remember it was previewed on a Sunday, I believe. And I remember I was at a brunch spot. I was scrolling through social media and somebody posted it. And I was like, and I had to keep it inside because we couldn't post it in the Discord. We agreed not to talk about it. But in certain corners, we were already talking about it. Modern Dredge is already running at least one copy of this because we lean really hard on Life from the Loam. I have a friend who played in one of the Legacy Preservation events in Seattle last weekend. She played it in Lands and had a great time with it. Standard, the Nexus of Fates decks are running, and apparently it destroys mono blue tempo. Again, just you're seeing multi-format impact of at least 3 formats are running this. That's bananas.
Mono blue, by the way, mono blue is dead. Like it died.
Yeah.
It is 100% dead. This was a literal play. I ripped a Blast Zone, I put it into play, and I 3 for 1 of them. Like, just immediately. Yeah. It was ridiculous. And they scooped, because what are they going to do? This card answers everything they do.
Uncounterable turn 4 Wrath against Mono Blue, for the most part. Mono White has seen a downtick as well, because this is another turn 4 Wrath against them. It's an uncounterable effect. Really particularly good in those blue-white sort of mirrors where there's all these absorbs. Yeah. And Sabotage is running around. So you get a Blast Zone. You can take care of either their Teferis at 5, or you can, finding the lines where you're able to take out their 2 4-mana cards while leaving all your stuff around. Like I've had games where I've had 3s and 5s in play, and then my opponent had like Seraph of the Scales, Vraska, Sorin, and I was able to swipe those out of play. Still lost that game. But there are ways that you can make Blast Zones so good, insanely good. The value lands in this set. I don't know if we're going to get to Interplanar Beacon or Mobilize District, but the power level, and Karn's Bastion, of course, the power level of the utility lands in this set are out of this world and not broken, just super good.
Just super. I mean, this for me, my strategy against all the Esper decks, I get this thing to 5 and I just wait them out. And they're going to get their 1 Teferi activation. Congratulations. You drew a card and untapped some lands for 5 mana. And I can just rebuy it with Crucible of Worlds. Or, hey, look, I have another copy. And I can keep it at 3 to get rid of your little Teferi or whatever. Like, there's tons, just infinite stuff to get with this card. It's amazing.
So be careful that you if there's a Tithe Taker in play, however, just be careful. Because I've accidentally run into that one before. I was like, what's wrong? What's glitching out on? Oh, right. I'm stupid. It doesn't let me activate anything.
Oh,
right. Tithe Taker makes it more expensive, correct?
Right. Just one more expensive. But I was like, I want to take this up to 4. Why can't I? Oh, right.
Can't do it on their turn. Got to make sure you do it
with this technology.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Ruben, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is a card that is probably the best limited card I've seen in a very long time. Like, I don't think there is any card in the set I would take over this card. And it's a rare, not a mythic. I think that it's the most powerful limited card of the last 365 days. In addition to the fact that it is very constructed playable. It's not the best, but it's also insanely good. And it's just got all the things you want. And it also set off a little bit of a tizzy in the Vorthos sphere of things because of the word that comes after the name. So my number 3 is Ugin the Ineffable. 6 colorless, gets you a legendary Planeswalker Ugin, enters with 4 loyalty. Colorless spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. +1, exile the top card of your library face down and look at it. Create a 2/2 colorless spirit creature token. When that token leaves the battlefield, put the exiled card into your hand. -3, destroy target permanent that's 1 or more colors. So that +1 is really interesting because it not only protects Ugin, but is also kind of card draw. Then the -3 is able to destroy things and is able to take away troublesome permanents. Not to mention the fact that colorless spells are now 2 less to cast, so free treasure maps for everyone going forward. But I want to briefly touch on Ugin the Ineffable, because the Ineffable is a nickname that was given to Yawgmoth back in the day, and now with Nicol Bolas out of the picture, presumably for the next story arc, there are only so many other big bads that are currently out there without introducing new villains. And if you name Ugin the Ineffable at the end of Nicol Bolas' story arc, you almost are begging the Vorthos community to ask the question, why did you choose that word in particular? Right? So I'm interested to see how it goes going forward. But in and of itself, Ugin the Ineffable is just a extremely powerful card. And you'll have to tell me about the legacy and vintage impact of Ugin, because I think that there's some, right?
We'll certainly get to that when we get to my later picks.
Okay. Well,
I thought that Ugin was one of the cards, because some formats want Karn, but some formats want Ugin. It might be Modern that wants Ugin for Tron as opposed to Karn.
Ugin has actually seen play in several decks. There's been a bit of an increase in Eldrazi Post and Legacy. Obviously, it's seen play in Standard in the Esper control decks. Grixis control, any sort of control deck obviously wants this. The Bant mid-range deck was playing around with it. Mostly it's Standard and Legacy that I've seen, but it's still early.
It's so good. It's so good. I mean, these
like,
are some of...
What else do you want on a Planeswalker other than card advantage, protects itself, gets rid of troublesome permanents, and makes things cost less?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I played this. I make a creature to protect it. and or get rid of their best permanent. And then I get Karn the Great Creator, and I go get Sorcerer's Spyglass, and I play it for free, which is insane. And that's just a thing that happens. And your treasure maps or whatever are free. Like this, the card advantage alone is amazing. And I love the little token in MDG Arena where it shows the little cards you're about to get from it is great. I know, Aaron, you don't see that, but it's cool. I promise you it's cool. It's super cool. Yeah. So either way, Ugin is just terrific. So Ineffable? Does that mean Ugin is Yawgmoth?
I mean,
they seem to sweep it under the rug pretty quickly. They're like, "Oh, sorry guys, we didn't."
Right.
They're doing a lot of weird stuff with canon and being like, "Well, that's not canon. That's canon. This story rebooted it."
I could believe that it isn't. It doesn't particularly matter. In 5 years, if they end up using it, it'll be like, "Oh, look, we had this Easter egg already."
Right.
But
Well, yeah. So we'll see. Okay, Aaron, what's number 3?
So Ugin's cute and all, but you know what trips my trigger. I need it fast and I need it broken. That's what I need. And so Ugin's fine, but Mama's got needs. And when I saw this card previewed, I'm not the best person when it comes to card evaluation, but I took one look at this card and I was like, there's something here. I don't know what it is yet, but I took one look at this and I was like, I couldn't. And so I remember I went into the Slack that I belong to, the Slack channel for Team Serious, which is a vintage group that I hang out with. And I just posted this and I was like, is this something? No. And immediately the chat lit up and they were like, yes. And so I knew there was something here. It felt so good to be right. This has seen play. This has been compared to Yawgmoth's Bargain. Speaking of Yawgmoths, which are incredibly big shoes to fill. So this is seeing play in Vintage in the Storm decks, the DPS decks. I believe they were playing with it in Outcome. This is seeing play in Standard. I'm surprised it isn't seeing more play in Standard, but there's a Golgari list floating around that I had the pleasure of facing during the preview event. And I was never so okay to losing to a deck before. Like just watching this thing in action was beautiful carnage like I'd never seen before. And I was like, I want to feel the way you are probably feeling right now when you play with Bolas' Citadel. So Bolas' Citadel is 3 colorless and 3 black. It's a legendary artifact. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. Cool. You may play the top card of your library. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to the converted mana cost rather than pay its mana cost. Oh my god! Oh my god! I cannot tell you, my heart is swelling just reading this. And then you can tap and sacrifice 10 non-land permanents. Each opponent loses 10 life. So what they're doing in Standard is you're playing all of the Explorer creatures. You're playing that 3 CMC Dino that lets you play extra lands and also requires the City's Blessing, which is not hard to do if you're just chaining through your deck. You play Gaia's Blessing to keep the loop going. You're getting 60, 70 life with your Wild Growth Walkers. And then you make enough of these permanents, these Explorer creatures, and you just sacrifice them all and kill somebody. It just feels incredible. And when you see it in older formats, you see it in Vintage and the ability to storm with this, like, oh my god. And it just feels broken on a scale I've never seen before. And the fact that Wizards is even kind of flirting with this sort of thing, I am so on board with it. And I want someone to break it like a Kit Kat bar. Just
like we got, well, first of all, this is my number 6.
This was my number 4.
Nice. This like when this starts to go off, like it's amazing. I've actually seen them start to run Samut to give all their creatures haste so that so they don't have to wait a turn. And so then they play all their sword tooths and just like for a million, which is awesome. Yeah, I mean this was just, you knew it was begging to happen. Somehow you can't pay life, for cards and not something happen.
You can't take the chocolate of Experimental Frenzy and the peanut butter of Phyrexian mana and mix them both together and not have something that's at least fun. Right? Fun. Like at least cool, not to mention pretty powerful, but they put it on a 6 mana effect, and artifacts aren't terribly difficult to deal with.
Right.
The Golgari Explore version with Path of Discovery that you were talking about earlier is the most popular version, although I have seen a lot of folks being toying with the Orzhov version, which takes Impassioned Orator and Inspiring Cleric and like Oath of Kaya.
You're basically nailing on my ear right now.
Right? Vampire Sovereign. And you use things like Wand of Vertebrae to fix the top of your
Okay,
library.
big fella.
There's some interesting stuff happening with Bolas Citadel in standard, let alone vintage, where you have Tinker and you can just go get it.
Tinker!
And,
oh my god!
And
my
then
god!
you can do just dark ritual things or Cabal ritual
A
things.
turn one. I did see someone. I played. I did a vintage stream last Monday, and someone had a turn one Tinker into this.
Yeah.
Did you win that game?
I didn't. I was on the receiving end, but I was very okay. I was like, you know what? I had made peace with the factor. I was like, if you beat me, I just want to watch you go off. Like,
Card
pretty cool. I was
crazy.
playing the Golgari version, and I was playing a Abzan version with Revenge and Revival to be able to rebuy.
I was so proud of you too. I was like,
Walkers.
look at you.
Either rebuy early walkers or 6 to half their life total and double mine. To be able
Revival Bressler.
and to put them from 20 to 10 so that my Citadel probably just kills them. Really cool card, really interesting design. Shocking that they printed it, honestly, when I just looked at what it did. But it hasn't broken anything yet, so we'll see.
Right. The key is that those, the combo deck, quote unquote, in standard kind of takes forever to get started.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
It takes up to 6 turns. You have to have a bunch of mana. If they've pressured your life total, that's a problem. You can't play Bolas of Citadel at 10. Like, that's not going to work.
It is possible to play a 6-mana spell on turn 3. With Llanowar Elves or Arboreal Grazer on turn 1 into 2 Rampers on turn 2.
Incubation Druids or whatever.
Yeah, Incubation, like Paradise Druid plus another Llanowar Elf lets you play something on turn 3. Right. But then your deck is full of Paradise Druids and Llanowar Elves to hit off of your Bolas' Citadel. So there's that trade-off there as well. And most of the time, it's a turn 5 or 6 Citadel, which you can interact with.
Right, and they try to set it up with the Wayward Swordtooth because you can just fizzle, like if there's 2 lands on top, oh crap. Right. So you want things that scry, which also Samut was very good at.
Dune Whisperer was the other one that I saw that lets you just go through your whole library, essentially.
Yeah. So Samut was both letting them scry because her ability lets you scry 1 after it get the thing, and gives all your creatures haste so you can kill them. Like, it was really cool to see how it all came together.
Yeah.
But it all has to come together. So I appreciate that.
That's the thing with what are referred to as 1-card combo decks. Things like Tooth and Nail, Enduring Ideal, is you do need 3 parts. You need to have all the mana, you need to have all the setup, and then you need to have the punch. Right. If you're missing, they're very susceptible to discard, right? But
it's fine because sometimes you just lose to a bunch of green creatures. So
that's true. That too.
Sometimes you just kill them. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go ahead and move on here to number 2. I don't have one. It's Aaron's number 1. I'm pretty positive of personally. But we'll see. Ruben, do you have a number 2?
I do have a number 2, and it is a beloved character who was missing for a decade. And I had the most fun that I've had during the preview event.
Oh my God!
We got a bunch of deck lists from our fans. I was sent a deck list from my friend Mark Walker, and we broke it. We broke it the first time out, and the deck is actually really good in standard too. I would be playing it if I had 4 copies on my regular account of Feather the Redeemed. Feather the Redeemed is a 3/4 flyer for red, white.
We start there. Level 0.
That's where we're starting. That's the worst that we can do is 3-mana, 3/4 flyer. Legendary creature, Angel. Whenever and we're not done because card advantage in Boros is coming. Yeah. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature you control, exile that card instead of putting it into your graveyard as it resolves. If you do, return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So we have a number of 1-mana instants and sorceries that either draw a card or scry 1 that are available to us in standard. Things like Ryle, Defiant Strike, Sheltering Light are all options with Feather, and that's just in red-white. We also have big pump effects. There's also Samut's Sprint, which gives +2/+1 and haste, and will come back to your hand. So you're already attacking with a Feather 5/5 the turn that it comes into play. In addition to the fact that there are a bunch of really good support creatures around with Feather, there's the 2/2 haste. I think it's like 10th District Legionnaire. Essentially has heroic and gets an additional +1/+1 counter. Those come back to your hand. And the interaction with Feather and Dreadhorde Arcanist is really interesting.
Insane.
Colorless and a red 1/3 trample that when it attacks, you get to play a 1-mana spell from your graveyard, or if it's bigger spells. But it would remove itself from the game, except for that Feather and Dreadhorde Organist both have replacement effects, and Feathers takes precedence. So you actually just get it back. Crazy to me.
It's crazy.
Like when I read the cards, I'm like, that's not how intuitively this would work, but it works, and it makes me so happy. So Feather, like I had games where I would just be like, all right, Feather, untap, 4 1-mana cantrips, draw 3 cards, scry 1, have 8 cards in my hand, discard for hand size at the end of the turn. On turn 4 in the Boros aggro deck.
Reckless Rage is just
Reckless Rage is
unfair. Absolutely unfair and amazing. And I actually heard just today, which I thought was interesting. Someone said, hey, about the Feather deck. We were talking about the Feather deck. And they said that Day 9 actually had played it on his stream and that he had gotten the list from me somehow, somewhere. And it was like Evan Irwin's Feather deck. I'm like, I totally didn't design that, but okay, it's kind of cool. And he apparently he was just crap talking on Reckless Rage, and he was like, "Why is this card in this deck? This card's terrible." And then cut to Feather in play, Reckless Rage. Oh my god, this is the greatest card I've ever played in my life. I've killed everything. Everything has 4 toughness. That was pretty fantastic. Literally just heard out of nowhere.
I was just one of the people that was the most excited to have Feather back, because every time there was even a hint of a Ravnica, I was like, Feather, like I just wanted Feather to come back and whoop the dog do out of Aurelia. That's all I've ever wanted. She was just one of those characters where they led you on for 13 years. They've been taunting us with this character, and this was just completely live up to the hype. Sprankle had even joked about maybe coming back to cosplay with this card, and what better card could you come back to cosplay with? Like, I hope to God she does it and just slays all these girls. I would love it.
For Feather to come back after 13 years.
Yes! Oh my God. Yes!
Years
redeemed.
Would be a nice bit of
It's poetic, yeah.
Feather featured heavily in the first 2 seasons of the Broken Pact. And a little peek behind the DM screen here. We chose Feather because we thought that Wizards just abandoned her. We thought that she was fair game because they didn't use her. So we were like, all right, we'll just make her. Oh, okay. Well, 2 weeks before the finale, we get Feather the Redeemed.
Nice.
And then I'm scrambling for my story. It ended up working great because we redeemed Feather in the end.
Very nice.
I see.
It was really fun.
Well, I'm looking.
Note about the wings, by the way. Feather is one of the original flights of Firemane Angels and has 2 sets of wings, whereas the newer versions, after the falling of the first Parhelion, only have 1 set of wings. But Feather, being one of the OGs, still out there with the dragonfly wings.
Right. I'm ready for the epic mythic spell of Aurelia and Feather going at it. That spell, of course, is called Whoop the Dog Do. And we'll figure out who whoops the dog do out of who when we resolve that spell. That's right. All right, Aaron, what's your number?
The joke all season on the Broken Pact was that the deal with Feather was #angel business. Like, no one knew anything. Even the Boros didn't know anything. Only the Angels were like, what did Feather do? Why isn't she around?
She knows what she did.
She knows what she did, and the Angels know what she did, and literally no one else.
I respect it.
#angel business. Keep it in-house.
Respect the angel patty. Got it. All right. Aaron, what's number 2?
It's one thing to experiment with a card. We've talked about a lot of cards so far that people have tried, and it's still early, so to be a card that's powerful enough to make people want to test with it is already an accomplishment enough. But when you can come out of the gate and immediately win a tournament with a new card, particularly in an older format, that speaks to the power level of a card. This was a card that immediately gained attention in Legacy and Vintage and is quite powerful in Standard, but the weekend that it came out, it won the Vintage Challenge. Like, can you imagine? Like, just soaring to the top of the food chain and winning. Like, I'm living here now. I could not believe it. I faced this the other day. Apparently, you can just Black Lotus into this card is like, what? What is happening? My number 2 is Narset, Parter of Veils. So Narset is 1 colorless and 2 blue. She's a legendary planeswalker. Narset, starting with 5 loyalty, has a static ability of each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. Note that's just opponents. You're fine. So your opponent's brainstorms, your opponent's ponders, your opponent's whatever. This is massive in those older formats where blue cantrips reign supreme. You can also just -2. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put it into your hand, put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. This is bananas. Like, who would have thought that like this card would be powerful in Vintage? People have been joking that Vintage is turning into a metagame based on Planeswalkers, which we haven't seen in ages. And there's another Planeswalker we'll talk about soon. But I mean, the fact that this was just able to soar to the top, I mean, really speaks to it. Magali killing it with the art. But I mean, this card is ridiculously powerful. Obviously, it's playing Standard. Miracles is adopting it in Legacy. Vintage, you know, anything with a blue deck is going to love this card, particularly the outcome decks. The ability to get this on turn 1, which is very possible, just cannot be understated enough. Even against the bizarre decks, I can draw, but I can't draw, but I can discard. Like, someone played this against me, and I was like, and it even made me do a double take. And I don't normally care about blue Planeswalkers. So, and Godspeed to Narset, because Lord knows she was due for like a good card. So I love it.
Yeah, and she certainly got one. I remember when I was reading Dave Humphreys saying that we designed this to really get to impact Legacy and or Vintage, and I was like, whoa, I did not put that together. Like, I keep getting like weirdly got by like trying to use my fountain renewal on my turn, and I'm like, oh god, you know, you just still feel so dumb. And I love it because in Arena, she just like kind of glows. She's just like, sup? It's like, you stupid, ain't you? You got that down?
Pointing at the card. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
It's nice. And
this was my number 6.
Nice. This was one of the best looking, in my opinion, Japanese alternate art Planeswalker cards. Oh, yeah. This is an almost $40 alternate art Planeswalker card as of right now, which is amazing. It's already $1.50 just in the English version, which again, Magali obviously destroyed. But this is just value. This just gives you sort of 2 bites of the apple for the Azcanta, the flipped over Azcanta
effects, exactly, on a Planeswalker, plus the static effect of halting your opponent's Teferis, your opponent's Brainstorms, your opponent's literally almost anything.
Yeah, and particularly like in control mirrors, like the Narset wins. Whoever has the Narset's going to win that game.
It's very strange how all of the specifically the uncommon Planeswalkers, which I mentioned earlier, are all these sort of like odd prison pieces. And not all of them are card advantage prison pieces, right? Because you have Dovin, the Hand of Control, which is like a little prison piece. You have Teo, you have the Wanderer, you have these interesting like control pieces, but not all of them add cards to your hand. And Narset specifically digging for specific things is such a huge deal. Not to mention the fact that you're shutting down your opponent's drawing extra cards.
Yeah, Narset's just the package, and it's just this, like, we're in that like golden period after War of the Spark of like, guys, do you know what they just did? Like the card that they unleashed on us. Like, Magic's not the same.
I also really like Narset's story arc. It hasn't really been focused on almost at all. But whereas Tamiyo went from mono blue to this Bant Planeswalker and now green blue, Narset has narrowed down and gone from Jeskai to blue white to mono blue as their character has sort of developed.
Nice. Let's move on here to our number 1 choices. Aaron, again, I'm just putting all the money on black on this one and expecting you to.
Let's see.
Wow. It could very well be me and Ruben sharing number 2 and number 1. I guess we'll see. Aaron, what's your number 1?
My number 1 is another one of those cards that came out of the gate super duper strong. We are seeing impact in multiple formats. You know, I mentioned that, you know, week 1 of War of the Spark, Narset won the Vintage Challenge. This card won the Vintage Challenge the other day. This is the reason why Eldrazi 12 Post, is good in Legacy again. When is the last time you have
I got you, Evan. I knew
that. I mean, you look at the strategies that this is enabling. We're seeing an increase in the mono red prison decks. We're seeing an increase in, you know, mono Bluetron. What? You know, decks that people would normally not give a lot of respect to, put some spec on that name. They are now having to reconsider because of this card. My number 1's Karn the Great Creator.
Nice.
Who had that?
Nobody. Okay, no. Infidels. So Karn the Great Creator is a Planeswalker, 4 converted mana, legendary Planeswalker Karn with 5 loyalty, has a static ability of activated abilities of artifacts your opponents control. Again, that sort of asymmetrical control aspect can't be activated. You can +1 until your next turn. Up to 1 target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness each equal to its converted mana cost. You can turn your Null Rods, your Sphere of Resistances into bodies and beat somebody down with
with them. Or you can -2. You may choose an artifact card you own from outside the game, meaning your sideboard, or in exile, reveal that card and put it into your hand. Giving an artifact an ability to tutor like that, like a wish, a repeatable wish, is absurd. I mean, giving an artifact, you're just seeing these one-of sideboards of like, here's a mycosynth lattice, which is, it was great. Somebody called it bacon, lettuce, and tomato.
Wow.
Love it.
Wow.
I have nothing left. But to see, I mean, again, look at all of the bases that artifacts can cover. You've got your pithing needles, you've got your cages, you've got your, a null rod if you need it. I mean, you can literally just whatever you're facing, Karn can go get, and it can also close out the game as well. I mean, like I said, you're seeing a rise in Whir and Lantern and Mono Blue and Modern. You're seeing 12 posts, see metagame shares in Legacy. It just won the Vintage Challenge the other day in a new version of an artifact deck. It's not quite stacks. It's not quite shops. This is something totally different. The wheel has been reinvented, and that's so hard to do in a format like the Vintage where the power level is so high. You know, a card might see play here and there, but it's usually slotted into an existing strategy. Like we saw with Narset, Karn has spawned a whole other archetype. I mean, you just can't understate that sort of power, and this is just the beginning.
Wow. All right, then. Yeah, I was 100% wrong. It turns out Ruben, his number 1 is my number 2. Ruben, go ahead.
Totally respect Karn at number 1. I think that is an absolutely great choice. The fact that you can go get the mycosynth lattice as the combo and have the full lock. You get the wishboard with Karn the Great Creator. It's seen in all these formats. It's great. Evan's been playing it in Standard, of course.
It's great.
I gotta say, there has never been a Standard Magic card that has cost $170. Like a card that you could just open in a booster pack, isn't foil, and is just $170.
Yep.
Is that what the cost is? The regular versions are merely $27, but of course the Japanese art for Liliana Dreadhorde General,
who isn't even on your list, Aaron, who is not even on. Miss, I cried at her trailer.
Look. Here's the deal. Doesn't say the word graveyard anywhere on the card. I forgive this one. All right. I'll pick up the slack on this one. We're all good.
Girl shoe. Girl shoe.
Liliana Dreadhorde General is 4 colorless black for legendary planeswalker Liliana. Enters with 6 loyalty and has a +1 that creates a 2/2 black zombie creature token. -4, each player sacrifices 2 creatures, otherwise known as Barter in Blood. -9, each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest, and also has a passive ability. Whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. This is Elspeth Sun's Champion 2.0. This is suddenly and without warning a way for the control decks to win the game with combat damage and the attack step. Think about that after the past 6 months of Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, and the other myriad of ways that people have tried to win games. Liliana Dreadhorde General has completely shifted how control matchups work. Also quite good in those sort of Abzan mid-rangey kind of decks as well. Extremely powerful. Every line of text is potent. Getting up to a ridiculous 7 loyalty with a 2/2 in front to play defense is just a massive, massive beating. I think that, and obviously Liliana being the central character of the storyline of War of the Spark, being the hero that we needed, and coming through in the clutch with a really good card.
And Yoshitaka Amano, the Final Fantasy, you associated with Final Fantasy the most in terms of an artist. Sure. The version is just, it's incredible. I don't know what else to say. It's the most gorgeous. It's super sweet. She's powerful. This was my number 2. Aaron, you know what you did. And
listen, so there were two strikes against her. 1, I hate the art. 2, she's expensive.
Of the English version.
Yeah. Well, I don't
sure. But I'm clarifying. I understand that the the Japanese arts aren't Aaron's thing. It's totally cool, but not liking the regular art is interesting.
So I don't like the art, and also it's very expensive. I mean, I have no doubt that she's going to be great in Standard, but like I said, I was really for a lot of my choices. I was really shooting for like multi-format dominance, particularly when it comes to like the higher ones. And I mean, she's great. I love that she's seen play and control. I just didn't feel the connection to it like I did, and so I'm glad that people are enjoying it. I'm always happy to see converts, maybe this will be like their training wheels where they start off with her and then they're like, I want to command the Dreadhorde. And I'm like, come here. Mama's coming. That's what we can do. So it's fine.
It's fine. Look, if we're going to be all thematic here, okay, if we're going to give it up for the biggest characters, the biggest story moments, the biggest cards, the most important ones, look, this is where I go, because this is when you think back on War of the Spark, what's my number one card? It's Nicol Bolas Dragon God. It's Nicol Bolas.
Yep, totally get it.
It's a red, 3 black, and a blue for a legendary Planeswalker Bolas, of course. It's a mythic, and it has all loyalty abilities of all other Planeswalkers on the battlefield. I just want you.
That's a great line of text.
Just marinate in that, okay? Just think about that, what's going on there. +1, you draw a card. Each opponent exiles a card from their hand or a permanent they control. That ability is nuts, by the way.
It is.
-3, destroy target creature or Planeswalker. This is exactly what we want to see on Planeswalkers. They protect, they destroy, and you win the game. -8, each opponent who doesn't control a legendary creature or Planeswalker loses the game. And a 4 loyalty starting for this 5-mana Planeswalker. It is incredibly good, incredibly powerful, and the only thing stopping it from being like an absolute monster is that Grixis' mana base is just as awkward as like a 13-year-old boy. Like, it's just weird. It's fine. It's just they can't get the
13-year-old boys who are listening. You are valid. I see you.
We love you. Sometimes get a little awkward. It's okay. And that's to look at that Grixis mana base, and it sometimes has problems. Overall, amazing card. If this was not impressive, Wizards had failed. Yeah. And this to me is awesome.
I saw so much of this in the preview event. I mean, everybody was playing Grixis. Everybody wanted to get the most out of this card. It was interesting in that it changed the way how you play Planeswalkers. Like, there were times where I would stare at my hand and it's like, oh, I can cast you're gonna have that too, and I don't want you to have that, because normally you think of Planeswalkers just being sort of for you, and even just trying to keep track of what it was doing. When you were seeing like the dedicated Grixis deck, like the opponent would do something, and it was like, I think it was like the Jace, was it the Castaway? Mm-hmm. Like, you pair the Castaway with that, and I was what's happening here? And like, there was a stack in chats like, oh, they're going off, and I'm like, just trying to like connect the dots of like, oh, that ability with that. Oh my God, just terrifying combinations you never thought were possible, which is what you want. You want to have that reaction when Nicol Bolas hits the board, because that's the goal of the storyline, to make you fear him. And when this card comes out, it's like, oh no. You just got to brace yourself.
They did a really good job with that, inevitability feeling of Nicol Bolas, the dread that you feel when Nicol Bolas shows up. Again, the mana cost is going to hold Nicol Bolas back. Red, black, blue is tough. That's a tough sell for anybody.
Right.
With that, and Karn is 5 mana of any combination of any of the colors. So, you weigh those two, and one of them is easier to do. And
Karn is 4. You don't even need 5. It's 4.
Karn, the Great Creator, costs.
Oh,
wow. Well, I'm right.
Because that card is ridiculous.
Yeah, card absurd. But yeah, I mean, even if this was 2 colorless red, black, blue, it wouldn't feel as epic. So I like that they made it all of the pips. This with the Elder Spell and 2 Planeswalkers, either yours or theirs, lets you win the game almost immediately, almost assuredly, which is super cool. And I think that they just did a really good job translating Bolas into this set.
Yeah, to show like the final, this is the Dragon God. This is his final form. Like, it does all this awesome stuff. You cannot leave it unchecked. It absorbs everybody. So it's this ridiculous thematic ability, and he's just at the top of the heap. And yes, at the end of the story, he's not, but like, this is at his penultimate awesomeness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's great. And that said, that is our top 10 War of the Spark cards. You'll see them on the screen right now for your review. Take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-hosts. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for your patience, everybody. We are working on getting back on a regular schedule for you all.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you. War of the Spark is such a great set. There are so many cards that I was thinking about putting in my top 10 that I didn't end up putting in my top 10. Plenty of honorable mention space here.
Yeah, thankfully, almost all of the cards I had on my list, as almost didn't make it to mine, made it on your alls, and so I thought that was great.
I had a couple that we missed overall, but still. I'm cool.
Move here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching or listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at Magic Mics, on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, our Magic Mics subreddit, and like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes or Spotify. And join us here next week. Same time, same place for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.